Parents of Yvonne Marlene Abigosis of Pine Creek First Nation in Vancouver, British Columbia in 1984 is still ongoing. Yvonne Marlene was last seen on January the 1st, 1984 in Vancouver's downtown east side and lived a high-risk lifestyle. Known to work near the docks, clients that owned boats would take Marlene with them on trips to Washington State and Vancouver Island on occasion. She was reported missing on May the 22nd, 2002. Marlene was the eighth born of 14 children by Frank and Vidaline Abigosis Campbell of Pine Creek Reserve in Manitoba. If she had still been living there, she would have been in the process of applying for the Common Experience Payment and the Independent Assessment process as a result of the residential school experience, her sister Valerie explains. Unfortunately, she was not a survivor, so she vanished before she had a chance to resolve that part of her past. My last memory of and contact with my sister was in March of 1984 when she telephoned me in the middle of the night. She was sick and tired of being sick and tired, so she was planning to leave Vancouver and try to make changes in her life. At the time, I was living in Revelstoke, British Columbia, she says, about a 5-hour drive away. I knew she would stop by my place because I lived right on Highway number 1. Sadly, she never arrived, and I never heard from her again. When Marlene had not arrived, her family became very worried and tried many times to report her as missing, but were unsuccessful. When I first reported her missing, I called them several times, and finally this officer told me. He said, "Well, what do you expect us to do? Get up and jump and start looking when somebody reports them missing?" he said. "People go missing all the time." She said that the police seemed uninterested in the case until she told them her sister had been living on the downtown east side. She said, "I couldn't get anywhere. There was nothing I could do anymore, you know." She said, "I just stopped phoning them." She said it hurt, and it still does. Valerie wouldn't try again until she heard about an investigation into Robert Pickerton, a serial killer convicted in 2007 of 6 counts of second-degree murder. It wasn't until then that the officers showed up at her home to collect DNA that they were finally able to get the report filed, and there was no match of any of the material recovered from Picton's farm or any other matches with DNA as of yet. Half of my sisters and brothers have passed away, and all have died from alcohol and or drug addiction, she says, without ever resolving the pain, anger, hate, shame, and loss of a childhood that they were put through while going to school. If it wasn't the school, it was from parents who were themselves former students at the residential school system. My father, also Marlene's father, suffered traumatic experiences in the residential school system, then passed on the violence and abuse of every sort to his children, including our mother. Therefore, the residential school system, the Catholic Church, and our father, who was a former student, took something from us children that severely compromised our adulthood, causing the deaths of half of my brothers and sisters, and that's something our childhood will never recover from, she says. I think of Marlene all the time. She was a beautiful person who made an effort to phone all the time to make sure someone knew where she was. I still wonder and want to know what happened to her. I have this fantasy that she left with a boyfriend in a ship and is abroad somewhere in Norway. She fell in love once. I met him, and he was a handsome Norwegian who came to Vancouver in a Norwegian ship, she said. She would wait for his ship to come in so she could see him. It was at this time that I saw a change in her, a change in appearance and attitude, and all she wanted was to be happy. She was struggling with addiction and was occasionally homeless. Despite her sister's repeated calls to police, a formal missing persons report would not be filed until 2002. The sisters grew up in a family of 16 on the Pine Creek Nation in Manitoba. When the sisters were 18, they struggled to adjust and both developed addictions to alcohol for years. Valerie fared better and eventually got help through Alcoholics Anonymous. So when Marlene didn't turn up to her sister's home, Valerie went to the police. A few years ago, police had contacted her to tell her that the case was cold but not closed. They came here to talk to me and my sisters and my brothers, she said. We couldn't find out anything else that they had learned. She said that she seems to have lost faith in the police system and doesn't know if her sister is alive or not. She has difficulty talking about her sister and still hopes she'll find her somewhere eventually, maybe spot her curly brown hair, tan skin, and thin frame in a crowd. She says, I still miss her and I think of her every day. Yvonne Marlene Abigosis is a female of Aboriginal Native descent and is a member of the Pine Creek First Nation and was born on November the 23rd, 1957. She is 5 feet 6 inches tall, 168 centimeters, and weighs approximately 119 pounds. She has wavy black hair and brown eyes and has been known to go by a number of names, including Clara Ross, Darlene Richards, Marlene Yvonne Abigosis, and Darlene Campbell. If you have any information regarding the disappearance or whereabouts of Marlene Abigosis, you are encouraged to contact the Vancouver Police Department at 1-604-717-2530.